but I was still trying to be physically invested and affectionate as well. And every time I wanted to crawl out of my skin and cry and like run away. And like, I still to this day, when I think about it, my whole body shakes.
What's your name and where are you from?
I was officially titled Lil Ribbit by a musician in Southern Oregon that goes by Namid Wolf, but we've kind of shortened it to Ribbit or Ribby over time. And I'm from Jackson, Michigan.
Jackson, cool. So what's your story? Why are you here today?
I have seen a couple of your interviews before with some friends of mine, and I felt like a really safe space to be able to share, which is why I reached out. My story is, I don't tell it much, and so I'm not really sure how to describe it. But
I sometimes find it easiest to start at the beginning.
Okay. So I was raised in Jackson as the youngest of like a lot of kids in a Mormon family. And my parents were both converts. So it was kind of like an interesting relationship within that dynamic of how they interacted with the church. So we weren't like super duper strict, but enough that like the brainwashing definitely had an effect. And that is, I think that's a big part of my journey as a whole, because it took, I think, almost 8 years after being out of the church to figure out that I was trans, because I was kind of, I don't even think that I knew that females could transition to males. Like, I found out about trans people because we had somebody in our neighborhood that was trans, and it was male to female. They were male to female. And it wasn't obviously talked about in a good way. But when I had my first like experience at 8, where I was questioning whether or not I should have been born in a female body, I kind of immediately was just like, well, you're born a girl and therefore you're going to live your life as a girl. Like, I immediately shut myself down, because when you're raised in the church, it's like, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids. Like, that's just the way it is. So I kind of led my whole life, feel like that was the only way to have purpose and meaning in life. Turns out I'm also asexual and aromantic. And so none of those things really lined up as my path. And I learned a lot of that just within the last couple of years. Like, I moved from Jackson to a different area close by, more out in the woods as a kid. And then right at the time I was about to hit puberty, we moved to Oregon, my mom and my sister and I. And so it was kind of like navigating this whole new environment, different friend relationships, not having most of my family there. That was my support system. It felt like stepping into an entirely new world that I was unprepared to navigate. And so I was...
You can just push him off. He's...
I don't want to come off as a not cat person. It's like, you can't tell them, like, I love cats, actually. They make me sick. So I'm experiencing this whole new world, and at the same time, I'm so aware that where I feel comfortable is in Michigan. And I'm coming back to spend my summers here with my dad and my brothers. But every time I would have to go home, it was a really difficult transition. And I think that that's a big, I've experienced a lot of transitions of sorts. And this is the first time that I'm getting to do like the hormonal one that will actually be exactly what I want and need. That's very exciting. I kind of had this thing in the back of my head like the whole time that I was supposed to be in Michigan. Like that's home. And because of that, it was really hard to set roots in Oregon. There were a lot of things that I liked about it. The nature was really cool. I met some really wonderful people that I'm still friends with to this day, but it was always that thing of like, you need to get home. And then I ended up in a relationship, like as soon as I became an adult, with this absolutely wonderful guy. He's just an angel. And we did all of our growing up together. And one of the hardest like things about it was that neither of us were actually like the relationship kind of people. Like we were more akin to best friends than anything. But I had this idea of what a relationship should look like in my head that was really messed up. And that caused such a tumultuous thing within that dynamic that we were very rocky the whole time because it never really felt peaceful because neither of us really were being true to who we were. And part of that for me was the asexuality, and then the other part was being trans and feeling like I needed to dress up. Essentially, how I call it now is in drag, as a femme, to make sure that like he felt comfortable being seen around in public with me, to make sure he stayed attracted to me, and that really messed with my head. As soon as we were able to actually end that relationship, still friends, thankfully. I was like, okay, I don't have any really ties. I don't have like any real ties here other than my friends. And so it would be really nice to move back to Michigan, but I couldn't really accept that that was a good path because I still had my friends there and I felt really tied to them. And actually, funnily enough, the first time we scheduled this interview was the anniversary of the day my best friend died out there. And today is the anniversary of the day that I found out that she died. So it's very interesting that both of those were the dates that we just picked without realizing it. But that was my biggest like push. I was like, okay, I'm out of this relationship. My best friend is gone. Everywhere I go, I think of them. I don't really feel like this is home anymore. Let's actually go home. As soon as I got here, everything just started to click into place. I started to find the exact people that I wanted to build my life with. It was just it felt so divine. It still does to this day where I'm like, obviously I made the right choice. And then within that, by finding like the correct community that could cultivate the energies that I could express myself within, I realized all of the things about me that I've shared in little tidbits. And that allowed me to dive even more in depth of actually facing like traumas and the things that like were the reasons that I couldn't feel peaceful in all of the environments that I was in. Like even within my relationship at the time in Oregon, there were so many things that were coming up on a regular basis that were setting me off, that were reasons that we couldn't be peaceful. And I didn't have any idea of how to be able to actually address those because I hadn't gained those skills yet. And I also didn't feel like I was in the right environment to be able to. I had started to a little bit with a doctor that I had out in Oregon, an amazing, like my sister's best friend, took me as her patient because I have the same conditions that Shiley does. And it's really hard to find doctors that know those conditions and can actually treat them. And she realized pretty quickly that it wasn't going to be medications and like checkups that were going to help me. It was going to be actually addressing what was emotionally stored in my physical body. And so I think we were doing that probably for 4 or 5 years before I moved out here. So I got a kind of a handle on what that could look, what I could do to help myself.
You can just, if you want to gently, I just got that couch. I don't want to.
Let's not do that.
Thank you.
I got a good look at what to do for myself in order to process. And the main thing was prioritizing time literally to just sit with my emotions, because I was so overwhelmed all the time, basically paralyzed. Like there were still to this day, honestly, I have days where I just can't get out of bed because there's so much going on in my head and in my body that I can't face anything. Like washing the dishes is too much. And I think that's a really common experience. I know a lot of people that I've grown up with that are like, there's these basic human necessities that need to get taken care of, but we are so trapped in those emotional cocoons that it's just too much. And so I make a point to allow myself to actually feel things now because it can be difficult. I think we all grow up being told that we're not allowed to take that time, or that our emotions aren't valid, and so there's no point in even doing those things. And that's very much the antithesis of existence. We have to be able to sit with what we're feeling, and even better, I think, for some people is being able to sit with it in a community space. I've been really fortunate recently to find a group of magical humans here in town that get together a couple times a week, and we actually talk about what we're going through and help each other process it and come up with plans and make sure that we're still putting things on our calendar that are enjoyment things, like going out to dance, because dancing is a really pretty much a guaranteed way to be able to let emotions be released in a way that doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. So I'm huge on dancing. That's one of my main things. And when I moved to Detroit, that was one of the first things. Like I got introduced to a group of people that are flow artists and like in their little local communities doing circus stuff. And they are very much like pro dance, pro music, pro like let's spend this time together and heal in this beautiful way. So I'm known as the frog fairy out there because I dress up like a frog and I'm out there dancing all the time. I get to do that a couple times a year now that I've moved. But within that group as well, there's a couple of really just precious gems that will sit with me for hours, and we will just talk about like the deepest, darkest things that have been weighing on our souls our entire lives. And then when we come out of it, it feels a lot lighter. And I think a lot of people have that experience as well without realizing just maybe how necessary it is. But at the same time, it can also be, I found that it can be not quite so helpful if you're not actually regulating while you're having the conversation. So that's my biggest thing right now. I'm regulating with this rock because it is putting pressure on my nervous system, telling my nervous system that like I'm present in my body and that I'm safe. Because if you're not having that internal dialogue with your nervous system, you can actually get more amped up and continue to program the trauma deeper rather than letting it release. So I'm almost always doing something to try to regulate. Normally I would be doing something more outlandish, like tapping my forehead or like my face or my collarbones, because those are the things that I feel are I've found that are most effective for me. But this is kind of like my low key way to do it.
So if you don't mind, if we could rewind just a little bit, you mentioned growing up in the Mormon church. Did you leave the church or do you still practice? I
left. I was actually having this conversation recently with a couple of friends. I don't talk about it much because it feels like it's so far in the past, but honestly, it was only about a decade ago. I was in my early 20s and I was pretty deep in it at the time. I was going to church. I was practicing on my free time. And I happened to be reading the Book of Mormon and a book on a woman's journey with psilocybin and how that helped her process her traumas. and a book on Taoism. And and I was like, yeah, all at the same time. I was like, this is just what I'm into right now, I guess. And so it's a very peculiar way to leave the church. But as I was reading them, I was noticing that each of these, the people within these stories, right, were all expressing the same experience, the same experiences essentially. That I was able to put together, like, this is chemical reactions in your brain that's causing you to have these euphoric spiritual experiences. Like, you're all doing this in a different way, but it's the same thing that's happening. And when I realized that, I was like, okay, well, if you can have a spiritual experience without being a religious person and participating in traditional prayer, then does that mean that, like, everything we've been taught in the church is, like, not true? Like, and then I started to practice it. Like I was, okay, I'll do meditation. Like, I will, which I had been trying to get more into for years, but it was not coming easy to me because I have this religious trauma hanging over me the whole time that totally messed with the way that I visualized the world and experienced my life inside my body. So I'm doing like Eastern meditations. I start taking mushrooms. I am praying a little bit still on the side and noticing what things feel similar and what feel different. And eventually I just stopped. I just stopped going to church, and it didn't feel like I had lost anything to give up, like, oh, this relationship with God, and specifically like the still small voice that they call the Holy Spirit. That was still a part of my life. You are told that if you leave the church, you will no longer be communicated to by the Holy Spirit, and you won't know right from wrong. That didn't happen. So I was like, well, duh, like, it's just a moral compass. Like, it's literally just following your gut. But you are so brainwashed to believe, like, you only can have these things that bring you peace if you stay with the church. Total bullshit.
I actually grew up Mormon myself.
Dude.
Yeah, I left the church when I was 18.
I found that men leave the church earlier. My brothers both left when they were all left when they were somewhere between 12 and 15. It seems to me like you guys can see the patterns more easily. I think women aren't given all of the same information. Hey buddy, I'm sorry. Nope. We aren't given all the same information, so I think we aren't able to put things together as quickly. And so it was really, I felt some type of way growing up, seeing my brothers leave, feeling like I didn't know what they were experiencing in or out of the church. So I couldn't comprehend what was going on with them, but I felt disconnected from them because of that. And I think they felt that same thing for me because I was so in it for so long. But I also was little things, like when I got my boyfriend at 18 and I was still in the church and then we became intimate, I justified it in my head of like, well, if God loves me, like, he's going to let me, buddy. Oh, you're so sweet, angel. He's going to let me be happy. He's going to understand that, like, I found my person, and maybe if I don't get married, like, it's still going to be okay. But I was still pushing for marriage because it was like, you need to be like bonded with this person. I'm already bonded to this person. I don't need this thing. But yeah, that's so cool that you also, we have so much in common, but
we really do.
Our meeting was so serendipitous. It is simultaneously so easy to talk to you and also like so unfamiliar and familiar at the same time, like talking about myself, because for like a decade now, I just don't, because for my whole life before that, it was constantly getting like, you're put in a room with medical professionals who are asking you all these questions about your life. And I was semi-verbal to non-verbal autistic kid. Like it was very, very difficult to get me into a position where I felt safe enough to say anything. And when I did, there wasn't really much to say. I was kind of like really goofy for the first like 7-ish years, I think, before the trauma really started to like compound in pretty heavily. So it was mostly just bits. If you could, if you could get anything out of me, it was a bit. But and then I just stopped talking because I didn't feel comfortable with it. I didn't feel like there was. I think it had a lot to do with like being put into a lot of really overwhelming environments. Like school was really, really difficult because I unknowingly am this little autistic kid that like already doesn't do great in the family home as the youngest of 6 kids. And then, but you're in a classroom of 20 to 30 really rambunctious children that are somewhat normal, for lack of better words, they're average kids. And I would get really, really overstimulated, and then I would come home and I would just crash. And my kindergarten teacher pulled my mom aside like pretty early on into the year and was like, I think that that your kid needs to be like evaluated, essentially. And what they came back with was PTSD and OCD diagnoses, which are correct and also not the whole story, because women are often not diagnosed with autism because it doesn't show up the same way it does for boys. We're more and more people are learning this as the years go on, and that's wonderful. And also, it still doesn't undo like the years of damage that are accrued from missing that piece of information for so long. Because there's so much about my experience that if I had known I was autistic and ADHD, and even having a better understanding of OCD, because the particular kind that I was diagnosed with is when you like pull out your own hair. And so we didn't understand that it was affecting other behavioral patterns as well. And so I'm in and out of psychiatrist office from the age of 5 and getting put on heavy medications. And at this point, I don't even have the opportunity to form an actual brain because I'm being so heavily drugged that it wasn't happening. So when people would talk, I couldn't hear them. I would either hear nothing or I would hear basically the Charlie Brown adult talk because my brain could not comprehend what was being said. And so that, I think, affected my ability to talk because I didn't even have words to speak my experiences. And I was on medications until I was 21. So about 15 years of being medicated. And that whole time I thought I was stupid because I didn't do well in school. I couldn't keep up with other kids. I couldn't have coherent conversations. I couldn't connect with people on a deep level. My only connection was like, can you play, can another autistic child play with me the way that I play, which is like making up stories, which is only mirrored kind of like the things that were going on in the home, because that was the only stuff that I was consistently like exposed to enough that I could mirror it. And a lot of that was humor because I'm watching a lot of funny movies because that's one of the only ways that you can like kind of get me to calm down. Like send me out to the tree in the backyard or put me in front of a movie. Otherwise, like I'm having a meltdown all the time because I'm so dysregulated. And like, thank goodness that I had those things. And that also kind of gave me my understanding that stories and nature are the safe places. And ideally, I'm experiencing them without other people around, because the more stimulus there is, even if I'm like in a reasonably good environment, it still is going to like set me off. And even within, like if I'm having a one-on-one with my bestie and they're also autistic, in the back of my head, I'm still having this constant anxiety of like, what are they thinking about me? Am I going to say the wrong thing? Like, are they going to go home and tell their family that I'm a fucking freak because I'm on drugs and my mom is a crazy, like interpreted as a crazy person because she put me on drugs, and like all of these things that like a 7, 8, 9-year-old should not be thinking about. And that was around that age as well. 9, 10 is when I started to get suicidal because my mom was really struggling with those kinds of things. And I am around her probably more than anybody. Even though like my siblings are there, I'm not feeling safe kind of like getting close to them. So if I need comfort, I'm going to mom. And mom is also autistic and she doesn't have filters. So she's sharing all of her deep, dark things. And those started to imprint on me as my own experiences. And I started to think, well, it's better to not be alive because I can't cope in this world. And it wasn't until I had like lots of friends that were autistic and ADHD and they had diagnoses. And I started to see that pattern around 4th grade. I was like, oh, I'm really connecting with these people. Like, I wonder why I didn't get those diagnoses. Because I was already familiar with the diagnosis process by that time. And then I get to be in like my early mid 20s and I'm like, I really think there's something going on here. Like I should pursue this, but also I don't want to deal with doctors. Like I am avoiding them as much as possible by the time I'm an adult because I've dealt with it so much. Like I was institutionalized for the first time at 15, spent my 16th birthday in there, like went through several hospitalizations through my teen years, and all like constantly having to share my story with these doctors. This is where we come full circle because I just get sidetracked. And I never felt comfortable with it because at the time I couldn't even understand what I had experienced, let alone be able to communicate that to other people. And I was so stuck in a victimization mindset that the story that I was telling them was totally skewed from reality because I was living in an alternate reality. And so to be able to say it now is completely different. Like this is so strange to me to be able to like actually say all of the things, but that's also, I'm so scatterbrained with it because I haven't had the opportunity to actually like say it chronologically, which is like the way my OCD brain wants me to. Like every time I realize, oh, I missed this thing, then my brain is like, you should have done this here. And like, oh shit, now like what is it going to take in post to fix this? Is that even possible? And I'm just like, just let it be. Just like constantly fighting my internal brain of just like whatever is coming out is the way that it's supposed to come out. And we're not going to be overly controlling about it. But that's taken so many years of processing, and like getting off of the medications was really like key for my personal experience because I did them. Was on so many for so long that, when I finally like learned that my particular body was expressing the way that it was expressing because of environment and my food intake and like the way that I was living my life was affecting my everything. I fixed my diet first and then started to be able to process my traumas and got off the medications. And then I was like, okay, I feel like a functional human being now. But what is a functional human being that doesn't really know how to socialize properly do at that point? Because like a whole point of living is being like spending time with your community and being fulfilled within the actual human experience that I was not having for my entire life. So I'm like diving into this thing basically as a new person. and it was a lot. And I was making a lot of mistakes because I have these like controlling tendencies that I didn't realize were there, that I also inherited from my mother due to her anxiety. And so a lot of the stuff that I was finding that was working for me, I was then trying to push on to my friends and family and like, hey, you should do this thing because this helps with this. And it's like, it doesn't matter if it helps with those things and those people are struggling with those things. They need to be able to discover them on their own, because most of the people that I'm hanging out with are just like me and they have that avoidant thing where like you're told to, there's a term for it. When you're told to do something, you're less likely to do it. And I have the same thing. So like, I totally understand it now from hindsight, but in the moment I was like, why don't these people that I care about want to do these things for themselves to improve their experience? Because I've done it. But also I hadn't healed enough to be a good poster child for this thing actually works, because I'm still a mess in so many ways. Like, yes, I've gotten a better control of my physical health, but my mental health is still such a mess that I'm still having breakdowns. And that's what the people closest to me are seeing. So they're not understanding like how far I've even come. And so it didn't help encourage them to be like, oh yeah, maybe I should try this thing. But that was a lot of like me just desperately trying to help everybody improve their situation and realizing that was actually making everything worse because I was pushing everybody away. And that was another key thing of like, my mom has done this. My mom is a really, really smart, like super fucking intelligent lady. And she's always been really good at doing research, but she's not as good at implementing the things because you kind of need community and consistency in order for things to be properly implemented. And she's always been alone. Nobody connected with my mom or cared about my mom or like bothered to take the time to love her and meet her at her level. So she was never able to actually put those things into action, but she was always telling me about them. And I was like most people in my life where I was like, I'm not going to do those things like because mom told me to do, but I was always filing it away in the back of my head, just like with everything that I was learning when I was institutionalized and in therapy. Like those things weren't being put into action, but I was filing them away. And when I was finally in a position where I could do something with them, I did. And then I was able to come back to my mom and be like, all these things that you learned, you were right. Like you were so right. And like, thank you so much for giving me these things. Now let me help you. Like, let's do this together. And I have unfortunately failed epically on that front because I am still, I moved her out to be with me about a year and a half ago because it wasn't really good for her to be in Oregon alone anymore. And I had this big grand idea that like, because I was in such a good place, because I was in a house by myself and I wasn't having any external triggers and I could take all the time that I wanted to be by myself and heal. So I was in a great space and I was like, yeah, gung ho, let's bring mom into this. And I bring her in and then I realized like, oh, I actually still have a shitload of traumas that are related to her that are being triggered on a regular basis now that she's back in my house. So I haven't had as much energy to like put into her, but the things that I am able to do for her, are making a really big difference. And seeing her being able to like thrive for the first time in her life, having like pieces of individuality come back because she raised her siblings. She raised all of my siblings. Like she raised her husbands. Let's be real. Some men are still children and hers were. And so she was like, she's always taking care of other humans rather than taking care of herself. And I have recently discovered that I took on this tendency as well. And that's like a big thing that I'm working through in therapy currently. I have finally started this really cool type of therapy called EMDR. It uses nervous system reactions to program an experience back into your body without the emotional like disturbance that's attached to it. So essentially it can take the lesson from the trauma and remove the part that puts you into fight or flight, which is super awesome. And I do a kind of therapy like that for myself, called tapping, which is the thing I was talking about earlier where I do the points on my face and stuff. But this specifically, it's really helpful to do it in a space with a therapist. Because when I'm doing it for myself, I can easily just choose like, I'm just going to stop now. Like I'm overwhelmed. I'm just going to move away. But if I set the intention of like, I'm in a space with another human, this is what we're doing, it's a lot easier to stay focused. But it's mostly just like, it's diving into your head and being like, okay, what is this experience that I've got going on? What is it making me feel? What earliest memories are attached to it? What would I tell my youngest self or the other people in that experience now if I could? And deciding how I would have wanted to feel in that time and then letting everything else go. And it's really super duper helpful. I love it. But the thing we're focusing on right now is my caregiving tendency, because I'm sitting here talking to you. I want to interview you. I want to ask you questions because when you told me you were also Mormon, I'm just like, okay, let's talk about that. But then also I'm just like, wait, this is supposed to be about me. This is supposed to be about me. And I'm like, no, don't do the thing. and in general, I have this, if I focus on the other people in the environment, then I won't even be able to be a burden. Like there's no opportunity for me, for my neuroses and my issues to come up and be a problem if I'm constantly focusing on other people. Jokes on me because they're still fucking happening. Like but then I'm also like neglecting myself in exchange for taking care of other people who don't actually need to be taken care of. Like, here's the thing I'm figuring out recently. I'm doing things for other people that don't actually need to be done. And if we all are just able to, like, given the space to take care of ourselves, we're going to be fine. Like, it will actually be better. Everybody's experience will improve because we'll be taking care of ourselves. And in that, it's just naturally better. Like, if I'm making sure somebody else is eating and I'm not eating myself, I'm going to fall apart. I need to eat like a heavy amount of protein every 3 hours or my body cannot sustain being awake. So that is something that I often just put to the side of like, well, it's too much for me to walk away from like being with this person because they're sharing their experience with me. And I don't want to say my needs are more important than yours, because for so much of my life, I was prioritized over everybody else in my family. Like my mom knew, and my brothers as well, as soon as I came out, that I was higher needs. It was like the whole family just fucking got it. And because of that, the other siblings got neglected. Like they were not given the level of care that they needed. And that affected our dynamic. A lot of my abandonment and rejection trauma stuff that I've been working on for 5+ years is because my brothers did not connect to me the way that I needed them to, because they were not receiving the care that they needed. And that is something that I carry around on a daily basis of like, okay, well, if I had been a less high needs, the brothers would have gotten what they needed. We would have been able to connect. I wouldn't have looked for love and affection from disinterested, emotionally unavailable men and strive to have like connection from people that weren't actually looking for connection, because that's the whole thing. Like the stuff that you miss in your childhood is what you end up trying to find later out in life. And as an asexual person, I was looking for connection with my brothers. My house was a reasonably affectionate place. Like I got lots of hugs and cuddles from my mom and my dad and my brothers, and not so much from my sister, because she's also neurodivergent and she's not touchy. Like whenever she's very sensory sensitive like I am. But she was like that to a bigger degree, I think, because she didn't get it as much growing up.
So earlier you mentioned being aromantic and asexual. Could you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think I had started to figure it out when I was still in Oregon, and I still was with my partner. I had a couple friends who are asexual, and it led me into like doing research on the different like types of asexuality there are, because like autism and everything, it's a spectrum. And I was pretty sure that I fell as a demisexual, which is on the spectrum, because I was intimate with my partner for nearly a decade. And after like doing some diving, like in hindsight, I was intimate, but I was never comfortable or peaceful. And if I could take it back, I would. But I'm glad that I was able to experience that with a safe person, so that it's not like an actual like regret. Because since then, I was when I moved to Michigan, one of the first things that because I hadn't fully figured all this stuff out, I made a friend really quickly, and she's an incredible human, one of my favorite people in the whole world. I was like, what are the men in Detroit like? Like, what's the dating situation here like, you know? And she was just like, don't date anyone. All the men in Detroit are trash. And I'm just like, okay, but I love people, and I can't believe that that's actually true. Like, there's gotta be people, like, we're in this community. I've already met so many beautiful people just within our immediate thing. And the first guy that I gave a chance was deeply troubled. Like, and he told me that from the jump. And I was like, well, I'm also a deeply troubled person. And so I totally get that. And like, maybe I can help you through your thing because of my tendencies of like wanting to help people. But I was like put off by his energy pretty much immediately. And I couldn't even really look him in the face. I didn't actually know fully what he looked like until like a couple of days into hanging out with him, because I was like, so like not, I knew what you looked like the first day we met because I could look you in the face because I felt safe with you, right? Same thing with you. Like I need to be able to do, that should have been a giveaway to me, but I didn't have enough experience at the time to know. Anyway, so we hang out for like a couple of months, and we like drove to Philly and like had an adventure that would never had otherwise. And I really felt like it was an opportunity to grow as a person. But I didn't feel safe. And as things went on, I felt more and more unsafe, but I was still trying to be physically invested, and affectionate as well. And every time I wanted to crawl out of my skin and cry and like run away. And like, I still to this day, when I think about it, my whole body shakes. Like it is something I'm working on clearing because it's a lot. But, and I believe that he like is a good person, but he also just didn't have the supports and stuff that he needed to feel safe in his body. And so I get it. It's not anything to do personally with him, but it was a wake up call for me. I think at one point we were sitting together and we were really close, like knees touching. And I was so uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't think that we should be physically intimate anymore. Like, I'm pretty sure actually that I'm like ace. Like I know I told you I'm demi, but like I think I'm way farther on the spectrum than I really understood. And he was like, no, you're not, because like we've been intimate. And I'm just like, okay, but hold on, buddy, you don't get to invalidate my experience like that. You're not in my brain. You don't get to tell me how I've been feeling. This is truly like where I'm at right now. And he was like, well, maybe it's just me, and maybe you'll find the dude down the line and you'll change or whatever. And I'm just like, this is the stuff people have been telling me my whole life, that to do with my autism and my eating disorders and all of the things that I'm dealing with, where they're invalidating my experience. And I was like, okay, if I'm continually finding myself not only in this experience where the physical stuff is setting me off and making me feel really unsafe, and I don't actually feel like I need it to begin with, and also every time I try to get close to a person romantically, I am not feeling safe and like I need it, I'm probably somewhere like heavily on the asexual spectrum. And the more there's some wonderful YouTubers that have done like deep dives on all the different flavors of these things. And I found like the specific ones that applied to me. And I was like, yes, it feels so good to be like seen and heard and understood, because for so long, there's just so many experiences that you don't have words for because they are so specific. Like there's times where I want to hold hands. There's also times where if you hold my hand, I want to scream, like, don't do that. But there are people in my life that if they give me a forehead kiss, that is euphoric. Like, there is nothing better than the feeling of a forehead kiss from the safest person in the world. I love it. Hugs vary so much for me. Like, I can give my mom a really long, deep, loving hug and have no interest in actually being present for it. And like, I'm just ready to get out because I'm not safe in my body and I'm having another person's energy come into my very like personal space. That's a lot for me to navigate. And there are days where like my best friend will hug me and I will just start sobbing because I really needed that heart to heart connection that you can't get any other way. My bestie, honestly, is one of like the only ways that I get physical affection, because like I did grow up, like I said, being able to cuddle my brothers. And then suddenly, like when I was in a relationship, cuddling was associated with being in a relationship with someone. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not allowed to even cuddle people because there's a sexual connotation to it now. it turns out it's not. But the only person that I can cuddle with is my lifelong best friend that I've literally known since she was a baby. When she needs to be held, I can hold her and feel so present and so secure. And like, this is exactly where I want and need to be. But it's also like I'm holding my baby sister. Like, and that I think is the difference between like safe intimacy for me needs to have absolutely no chance of anybody in the situation taking it the wrong way. I can't cuddle with a man that I have not known my entire life and see like a brother. But I also can't even cuddle with my brothers anymore. Like, these are the men that I've known my whole life and I felt really safe with. Like, hugging them is really difficult for me because I am so sensitive to every kind of energy. And I think that's a big portion of, like, a big part of why I am ace and arrow. I am too sensitive. I pick up on fucking everything. I am so aware of every like emotion that you're experiencing in your body. The closer you get to me, the more it's registering in my body as my own experience. And I've already got enough going on in here. Like, I don't need to be trying to dig through what's mine and what somebody else's. So I have had to draw those lines of like, okay, there are some times where I do want to hug somebody. I do want to kiss somebody on the forehead. I want to put my hand on your knee and like be there for you. But if there's a chance that that energy is going to leak in some way and it's going to taint whatever that relationship is, I can't do it. And that is it's frustrating in a lot of ways because I want to be able to connect deeper with people. And I think most people, physical intimacy is like the main way that people connect. And so I've done a lot of expanding my vocabulary and my method of verbal expression so that I can have you understand where I'm at and how much I see you without that even taking place. Like, I think most people in my life feel very seen and understood and loved because of how much work I've put into being able to do that without physical touch. And then if physical touch can happen, that's just a bonus, but I save that for if you're having a breakdown and you need a hug, of course I'm going to give you a hug, even if it doesn't necessarily feel safe and comfortable for me in the moment. But like, I will be there for you in the ways that people feel comfortable and need. But that also comes back to like, okay, I'm experiencing all these energies all the time, and I'm really sensitive to it. And I'm also, because one of the reasons it's so difficult is because of all the things that are going on in my body, right? So I've been taking these classes with my doctor for like a little over a year, where she's taking us through every system of the body and showing us how it works, how to support it, what ways, what physical illnesses can occur in those things, and how we can like counteract them as much as possible without big Western medical interference. I've thankfully never had to have any surgeries. And part of that is due to how much she's done for me. Because I've been sick my whole life and it's been really hard on every system of my body. So one of the things we do is I will name every organ and part of my body, and I will have deep conversations with it of like, what are you storing in there? Like, well, I start off with, I'm sorry that I haven't been paying attention to you. What would you like to communicate to me? How can I best support you? And literally just that piece alone helps each thing function a little bit better. The first class I ever took was on adrenal glands, and I get adrenal fatigue pretty bad because I'm constantly in fight or flight when I'm not doing enough of my regulation. Which I should be doing a little bit more of right now. But so I named them, and I had this conversation with them, and they just kind of slowed down. Like, I felt it in my body of like an energy shift just from being acknowledged. And that happens with every single thing, like my intestines and like my brain and my heart, and which is named Harold after my grandfather. I tend to name them starting with the same letter that the organ starts with. So my bladder is Barry, my heart is Harold, so on and so forth. And I find that like that is just kind of like a silly, goofy way to connect in with them, which is better for me because I try not to take life too seriously in general. Like I will talk about these things all as if they're the most serious thing in the world. And also I'm so lax about it because taking things seriously makes me stressed. So if I name my heart Harold, I'm just like, hey, what's up, Harry? Like, you've been fluttering a little bit lately. What's going on, buddy? Are you a little anxious because that boy is cute? Like, what are you seeing in him that's cute? And that is another thing of I am attracted to most people that I come in contact with because I am seeing beautiful things about them internally or externally. I have an aesthetic eye for certain looks. I'm like, oh, I'm extra drawn to that. But usually it's an energy where I'm just like, I want to be around you. I want to spend time with you. And there's always that thing in the back of your head that's like, well, if you're enjoying spending time with somebody, maybe you should just date them because then you can see them all the time. It's like, actually, you can see your friends whenever you want. And then there's no stress that like anything bad is going to happen because you guys know where you're at. And there's no blurring of lines within that of, it's way easier for me to communicate with somebody if I'm friends with them. If I get in my head about what the person might want from me, I lose my ability to communicate. Like I will just shut down and I'll say stupid shit and it's just so frustrating. So I've just immediately draw that line of like, if I meet somebody and there's something that I would, you would call a spark, I pretty much immediately tell them like, yeah, I'm Ace and I'm Arrow, and like in some sort of like, fluid, natural way so that it doesn't feel like I'm trying to like tell them that I have no space for connection because that can be a thing that can happen when you say that to someone. And sometimes I actually do that on purpose. If I need somebody to really understand there's a firm ass boundary of like, don't come in my space because some dudes are weird. I will put it down as like a hard thing, but usually I'm just like, just so you know, I can be a really, really wonderful friend because that's what I have to offer you. And that has been so good for all of my friendships. So beneficial. And I went on a tangent and then I forgot where I was going.
You were talking about being present with the different parts of your body.
Yes. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah. So in doing that, that practice has actually helped me a lot with coming to terms with my transness because I got to realize like in what parts of my bodies I felt most unsafe and things that needed to be changed. I've had body dysphoria for pretty much my entire life. I think from the time I was like 8, when this situation started to happen. And it started to get really, really bad, to where I used to say I literally said, I just want to cut off my chest. Didn't know that was a thing that you could do. So I'm really excited about that. That's going to be, and I've also always been kind of like anti-surgery, because it can really mess up functionings of the bodies to get anything removed. Like people pretty much what I've learned is you actually need your tonsils and your appendix. They are crucial in body functionings. And if you take them out, you will have systematic shit go on that, like, if you actually addressed why they were having issues in the first place, you would be able to keep them and not have those system failures down the line. So I'm anti-surgery, but I'm also like, I don't need these for the purpose that I need them for, and they're not actually tied to anything else as long as they leave my lymph nodes in, which is like a thing that they tell you if you're going to get top surgery. Like you can get a kind where they take the lymph nodes out, or you can get just the regular boobs gone. Don't take the lymph nodes out if it can be avoided. So leaving those because you need those, but I don't need to feed babies, so I can get rid of these, and that's awesome. But altering anything else about my body, like I can't do that because now I'm too aware of what everything is doing and how it's all in harmony, and how supporting each individual thing on a regular basis can just help everything function smoother. And with my conditions, everything in the body pretty much is made up of connective tissue, and I have a connective tissue disorder. So they've pretty much all been malfunctioning my entire life. And I didn't know how much the communication aspect and supporting them emotionally has an effect on it. One of the things that I've had struggles with for most of my life is my hips, because I used to do party tricks. I used to put my feet up onto my hips and walk around on my knees, and I would also put my feet wrap around my head and walk around on my hands. Terrible for the hips and knees. I have massive cartilage damage in those things now, and the dislocations are not fun, but they are stronger now that I'm on T, because it strengthens connective tissue, and also not doing those things and doing physical therapy. But also I found out that I store loss in my hips. When I lost my best friend, my left hip started to ache like it had never done before. And when I lost my dad, it was my right hip. And I just basically carry around my grief and my loss in my hips. I have to like actively take time to talk, to like allow myself to sit with it and let my hip release. And that's a lot. It's a lot of like, when we are doing our class and we're focusing on each piece intentionally, I almost always am able to come up with what the thing is that I'm storing in there, because at this point it's comes pretty naturally to me. I'm like, oh yeah, it was that specific that specific trauma, because my doctor and I have been doing this for a really long time. It's been so helpful. And also it's frustrating when I feel like I'm in a go mode where I don't have time to stop and acknowledge those things. And I'm noticing the pain get higher and more injuries are occurring. And I'm telling myself I'll get to it when I can get to it, but then I never get to it. And it's just like the pain is compounding. And then I end up in bed for a week or two. And I feel like I failed, because I know what I'm supposed to do. I know how to take care of myself. And then I'm just not doing it for the sake of whatever else is going on in my life. And that shame spiral starts. We were talking about earlier, like this feeling of like, I'm not doing enough. I know better. Why am I not prioritizing these things when that's all it takes is just sitting with myself for 5, 10, 15 minutes? Like, I could actually fix this, and I've just decided that it's not worth it. But I'm worth it. That's my main thing that I've come to lately, is I'm fucking worth it. I'm worth all the time that it takes, all the energy. And if I'm willing to put in the time and energy to help the other people in my life, there's no reason why I can't put it back into myself as well.
100%. Yeah. Well, thank you, Ribbit. This has been an incredible interview. I really appreciate your insight and everything that you've shared with us today.
Thanks so much for giving me a place to share it.